We've just heard episode 4. And one of the things that jumped out at me, and I'm curious what you thought when you heard this, is that relatives of Lester Eubanks were called before a grand jury in Columbus. Tell us what that means and why that would be significant.
Well, it's significant if there is a grand jury investigation. Grand jury proceedings are secret proceedings, and that means that someone goes in front of the grand jury's been impaneled, and they are being examined by a prosecutor. It's the very beginning of the criminal process, and everything that you say is under penalty of perjury. And there is no cross-examination, and so you are there to tell your story in front of generally about 23 people. If you lie in front of the grand jury, it is a federal crime, punishable by up to 5 years in prison and or a fine. I think it raises the stakes in a way that perhaps this family may not have realized they would get to this point.
Right.
So if you have a family member that has been speaking with Lester, and you have a family that perhaps sent Lester money or sheltered him even briefly, what do you do with that? And you don't have an attorney with you present while you're in front of the grand jury generally. What do you do with that?
Right. So there's some question about whether Lester returned to Ohio to the funeral of a family member using the name Uncle Pete. And I'm curious for the people, if that happened, for the people who were brought into that circle, what are the requirements now on them, or what are the legal issues that they have to confront if they were in a room with Lester and have been asked about it?
Well, if they've been asked about it in front of a grand jury, they could either plead the fifth, right? You always have that at your disposal, or they have to tell the truth. They cannot lie. Because if it's, I didn't see Lester, I wasn't there, and he was there, and they did see him, then they are lying. And it, again, that's perjury. So that's a very difficult position to be in as a family member. And it's also, you're, again, sort of straddling that line, the legal line and the moral line as a family member. But now there are real consequences to that.
Right. Are there limits to family loyalty?
I would imagine so. I mean, you know, there are folks that will go to prison for their loved ones, but they very well could.
Yeah. The other thing that we got a sort of sense of a little bit in this episode was Lester's life in L.A. And I'm just curious because nowadays it seems like it would be very hard to hold down a job with nothing more than a fishing license as your ID.
Although there are so many people that do it. They work in the shadows.
Yeah, tell me about that. Is there, I mean, is there a black market economy or a shadow economy that Lester could continue to survive in?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think we see it today. And I certainly think in the 90s, I think that existed. I mean, you know, if he was doing yard work, if he was doing any kind of work off the books, I think it's very possible that he stayed gainfully employed for a long time.
Yeah, and we heard a little bit about the kind of work he was doing, like at the mattress factory, where people would walk in the door and ask for a job.
And ask for work. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think there are a lot of employers that do that. Painting houses. People oftentimes will pick up you know, folks on street corners for day jobs or even week-long jobs.
Right.
So I think it's very, very possible if he was big, strong man, that he was able to ingratiate himself and work over and over and over again. That's not very far-fetched.
Yeah.
Listen for free now on Apple Podcasts.